You know, in my opinion, when it comes to the Epstein stuff, it seems like they're getting warm, but everybody's a little too hesitant to actually read what's in the paperwork and make the connections. Now, I've done it myself. I've already said at what I will when I read the Epstein files and I overlap it with the Steve Bannon interview and the other data that we have on Epstein, the scientists, there were over 1,000 of them that were working on Los Alamos in New Mexico. He bought Zorro Ranch in New Mexico because he wanted to recruit those scientists to come work for him. He recruited them, bought Zorro Ranch, 1993. Because after the Cold War, the Manhattan Project scientists were out of work. They needed somewhere to go. That's in the files. What he did with those scientists that were studying high energy physics and using mathematics, according to him, where he barely mentions it, they were trying to predict the future by seeing the stock market ahead of time, because that was a system that you really couldn't rig, in his opinion. And it seems like they were able to see more because he was able to predict the lottery and win the lottery. They were trying to convince me that maybe it was a bunch of corruption and that's how he won the lottery, but I don't see that. That would be too much corruption. That would be too many people to pay off from the top down. If he invented something that could see the stock market in the future, then I'm sure with more technology, he was able to see more than that. These people, they're getting up to that point, but they're afraid to go into the unknown. If you listen to the Epstein files, if you listen to the Steve Bannon interview, he talks about how there are these spaces, these nuanced studies of physics, and where there's quarks and there's things that we don't understand, the unknowns of science. And he said that, and Jeffrey Epstein himself said, there needs to be a new category of science that studies this basically unmeasurable areas of science, because there's a lot happening in there. We don't understand it. We don't get it. That's what he was specializing in. The reason they bombard you with all the sex stuff and all the sultry stuff about all these kids and these politicians is to distract you from the technology and the technological things, the advancements that he was able to achieve, which made him a rich man, but it also made him one of the most sought after, most valuable people human society has ever created. They're going to talk about that a little bit here. I haven't watched this part of the interview, but we're going to watch it together. And I want to see if anything new comes up, because we're looking at the same thing, but we're seeing something different. I want to hear their side.
They deliberately set out to destroy him, and they did it with impunity.
When I look at these references to Ball in the Epstein files and these discussions about the Bohemian Grove and Abramovich.
Now, again, I haven't watched this part of it. They're going to basically talk about how these people believe in a mysticism. I think that's what Epstein is referring to. There's this unknown part of science that our current way of thinking cannot explain or understand. And I think that's where that's where the mysticism comes in, and its belief in these other beings like Baal that they worship. I think that's where they're filling in the gap with these religious beliefs of these creatures that they worship, because there's like this unknown area of science of things we don't understand, and trying to figure out these areas. I mean, maybe this is what they're stumbling across, because it's kind of weird that so many people believe in something, but it's like, why do you believe in this Baal? Why do you believe in these satanic occult things? What proof have you seen? What do you know? Because us regular people are not walking around eating. I mean, yeah, when you go to church on Sunday, flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood, you eat the little cracker, you drink the wine. But these people actually have, I've seen the videos where it looks like a human corpse, and people are slicing pieces off of it and eating. I'm not there. I don't know if that's a fake body or a real one. But these are traditions that are taught to people. Who's teaching it and why? And I think they're going to talk about that here.
It's and all of these celebrities getting together and pretending that they're eating people, and they're sitting there with a bloody corpse cake, and they're eating it, and they're a part of it. Do you think that that's just, I mean, at the end of the day, do you think that that's being performative? Or do you think that they're really called upon by some satanic force to be involved in these parties and involved in these groups and to carry out these horrible things against these children?
Well, the simple answer is, I don't know.
And you know what? Finally, somebody I can respect. At least he says, I don't know if this is performative or if it's real. This is what makes this guy credible, in my opinion. He admits it. I don't know. They're eating children. They're pretending to eat children. They're worshiping Baal. Do they really believe this stuff, or are they just being performative? But don't you have to learn the art of performing? Don't you have to learn the skills to be an actor? Don't you train? Where did this all come from? Who is teaching certain people to do this, but not others? Like there's something missing.
And I'm not sure that they know. I mean, there's always this line between performance and reality. And at some point, a performance can become, it's a bit like a role playing the person. Arguably, from an actor's standpoint, you have to immerse yourself in the character. You have to make it as real as possible.
Yes, but then that would mean that there is a script. The actor is basing his role off of what? Where is this written? What are they reading? If this is performative, what are they basing it off of? What is the source? That's my question.
And therefore, there is always, in the process of imitation, in the process of acting or pretending, even in the process of what you can think of as a parody, that without knowing it, at some point, that can cross the line into, well, you can make it real by making it happen. I mean, I don't know. Did it start out that you just have a kind of comical interest in, you're playing it being a cannibal? If you play that long enough, is there the possibility that you might actually become one?
And now people from my side of this argument, we're more inclined to listen to people like David Icke. I don't think there's only one type of human on earth. I don't think all people are exactly the same. Some of us can eat other humans and not develop what is it called? Ruku, whatever, or prion disease when you're eating other people. And technically, if you're not the same types of humans, is it still cannibalism? Or is it just it's your source of nourishment? We don't know. And it seems like they're redacting these files and removing them because that information is possibly in there, that we are sharing our world with other species of humans, but there's not very many of them. The majority of people, what if it's 90% of us? What if it's 95% are humans like you and I, where we would get sick if we eat other humans, we get sick if we drink human blood. We're a certain way. And this small group that has always been here, because think about it, every country had a royal family. Who put the royal families in power? Where did they come from? A royal family was just one group, and there's tens of thousands of regular people, then you got the royals. So it seems like there was always this minority of people in charge. It said that those minority of people could communicate with beings, interdimensional beings. I wouldn't say aliens, but they could communicate with them because of their genetics. They said that these royals were blue bloods because they were a hybrid between reptilians who controlled the planet and controlled humans and enslaved us, and regular humans. They were hybrids. So these interdimensional beings, even if they're standing in front of you, I guess you're not able to see them because the human eye can only see a very narrow band of the light spectrum. But these royals, because they were mixed with reptilian blood and human blood, they had the ability to see these other beings, and these other beings are the ones who told them what to do to amass power, to stay in control, build weapons, everything. And the reason that they inbred with each other consistently, even though it would make their children sick and give them a lot of disabilities, like their blood wouldn't clot. You get a paper cut, and a lot of them would pass away. They wouldn't live very long, a lot of deformities, but they had to inbreed to keep the ability to see these other beings. So that's also what I'm seeing hints of that in the Epstein files as well. But now apparently these parts of the files are being deleted. Again, I'm on the David Icke side of this whole spectrum. And that's the stuff that David Icke's been talking about for, 30 plus years. Now people are reading the Epstein files and they're starting to think that maybe we're not alone here. And they don't have to be aliens. They're natives, but they're just different types of humans. Or it's another species of human. Or not. I don't know. It's really hard to tell. And that's what we're saying here. We don't know what these people are mimicking. We don't know who's telling them to do these rituals. We don't know why they're doing them, trying to figure it out. But they're imitating something from somewhere. And we can't source it because it's not something that us regular humans are probably privy to. There's so much in those files, and it cannot come out because of the whole COVID vaccine, or that the COVID files, the vaccine files are in the Epstein files. And with everything going on in the Middle East and with Trump, this is not the time to release that. But it's all intertwined. I mean, these men talked about everything. They talked about, well, how do we get rid of all these poor people? They already let you know there was a depopulation agenda to connect it to that vaccine. That's in there. And people are dying all over the place. Everyone has cancer. But also Epstein put his own DNA in the solution that was injected into you. So everybody has a little bit of Epstein in them now too. Lots in these files, but let's continue.
I mean, what does the mere fact that you're playing at cannibalism suggest about you and the other people who are there engaging in this action? Right. And there's always a kind of interest there.
Right.
So again, someone or something that is looking to exploit that, that's all what you figure out what to do. What do people want? What?
And furthermore, can you inspire others with this doctrine, which is what this satanic church you said did? He didn't have to believe it, but he could present it to other people who wanted to believe it. And they could therefore use it, because we saw some of the most evil politicians involved in this. Those people had already murdered through their career. And so it's almost like a backward justification of the life they've already led. An email we showed last week between Larry Summers and Jeffrey Epstein. Actually, it was a text exchange saying, we're looking for academics who will publish research showing that all of us are Jekyll and Hyde, but we're more Hyde than Jekyll, meaning they wanted to validate their base nature. And so I guess what you're trying to say is whether or not that's actually run by the devil, we can't prove that right now, but they clearly exploited it. Am I correct?
They wore the shirt. They wore the sweater. They tried to play the game and be a part of it.
I mean, here are the dangerous things that that we know we have to deal with. Okay, we can sit around and debate the physical. Theologians can debate the devil. What we can't debate is that human beings, although most people are nice and cooperative most of the time, they are that until they're not. They are also quite capable of being deceptive, selfish, and violent. the one thing, let's face it, that you have to fear in this world more than anything else are not bears or crocodiles or even demons necessarily. They are other human beings bent upon some kind of an agenda. And the ways in which they can justify those agendas, you know, I'm not sure that people have to be possessed by devils. They just can become them.
Yeah.
It's.
I appreciate your. I appreciate the nuanced take on this. Like this idea, I think our chat room is like, maybe a lot of them would want to say, yeah, it's clearly Satan that's running this entire operation, right? It's clearly the devil that's running this entire operation. But I think if I'm wrong, correct me, but your point is that a lot of these people, in many ways, they're playing the
be their in the old witch cults. Well, there probably still are witch cults around, but if you go back to the 16th, 17th centuries, and you look at what were called the witch cults in Europe, a central figure in a lot of their meetings was a figure that was simply called the devil. This was the figure that would often preside over the sabbats and the meetings that they would have. And this was a figure that was usually adorned in fur. They might have cloven hoofs, you know, the whole sort of Baphomet satanic goat god sort of come to life. They would perch on a rock or in a tree stump, and they would hold court. But even one of the things that was generally acknowledged at the time, even in the transcripts of witch trials and interrogations that was admitted, was that this was a person in a costume. It was a person who was embodying the god, who was embodying Pan or Satan or however they wish to describe him by dressing up like him. And by dressing up in that way, they were to assume a certain amount of power. So it was both that this is a person in a costume, but this person in a costume represents this greater power. Now, again, different people at the meeting might have taken that on different levels of seriousness, but to go back to something I mentioned before, the appeal in much of this, the question is, what do all these rich freaks get out of this? I mean, don't they have enough money to buy anything they want?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean, honestly, that was my question too. What are these people getting out of this? But again, no one's explaining where this is coming from. I mean, are they reading a separate book, separate text? What are they imitating? Where are they getting these ideas? That's what I want to know. That's what I'm curious about.
Part of it comes like this concept of transgression, of deliberately breaking moral, physical, any kind of laws that you have. So, for instance, normal morality says you're not supposed to eat people. Well, let's try it and see what happens. Normal law says that you're not supposed to have sex with children. Well, the whole concept here is that anything which is forbidden is in some way a secret path or a quick and dirty path to wisdom. Mm-hmm. And it's a Well, you've heard this idea, which has gained a certain amount of popularity, that we're living in a simulation, that, it's all the Matrix. Somebody made a movie about the Matrix, and now that's caught on as if it's real. Notice how people can do that. But one of the ideas is that if reality as we know it is a kind of simulation, if it's just some sort of extremely elaborate cosmic video game, then nothing in it is actually real, that most ordinary people, and I'll tell you the way I think that the way that Epstein and a lot of his buddies tended to look at ordinary people, they look at us like we're NPCs. We're non-player characters in their video game. Mm-hmm. We really don't count.
Right.
Our lives, our death, our suffering isn't real any more than that of some electronically generated character in a video game. So the idea about the Matrix is that it's this reality that we're trapped in. It's a reality created by the demiurge, by some sort of jealous god, however you want to imagine it. And that the idea is that how you break out of this is to simply begin to disobey. That you begin to break the rules and you just do whatever it is that you're told you're not supposed to do, and you keep doing that until the idea goes, you cause the Matrix to collapse and to reveal the actual reality, which is beyond that. Now, is that all a bunch of BS that credulous people believe to justify their evil actions? Well, that's one explanation. It isn't necessarily the only one. So the obsession often comes in trying to define things. I mean, here again, what we want to do is we want to put a word on something. We want to come up with some neat word that will completely explain to us what Jeffrey Epstein was, what his world represents. And that would then give us some sense of pretend power over it, which we wouldn't have. Just look at what they do. Okay. Look at the evil that they as human beings perpetuate on others. That itself is bad enough. That's the stuff which is prosecutable. So however much we do it, we're never going to put the devil on trial, but we can put Jeffrey Epstein and others like him on trial, which of course we seemingly were, or by we, I mean our authorities were quite reluctant to do for a long time. Okay, there are the questions to be asked. Okay, what they do is evil, regardless of whether it's inspired by their own flawed natures or whether it's described by demonic possession. The result is the same. That's what we have to see. That's what we have to punish.
Right. At the heart of it, it's almost like a scapegoat in a lot of ways.
Well, it seems, I mean, we now have new evidence that he ordered this occultist book by Donald Michael Craig, on Kabbalistic sex magic, but he was already practicing it. So it's like he didn't need it to begin the evils. He maybe was looking for a paradigm to stick to his evils, and we can never know which came first, the chicken or the egg. It's not truly knowable.
No.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for your, yeah. Right. I mean, we can see it. We can be, scandalized by it. We can be horrified by it at the same time. We can never hopefully relate to what these people were truly like. So thank you for your expertise. It was a pleasure to talk to you for the first time.
Okay. My pleasure.
Thanks, Professor.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Ooh. Okay. So what are we going to do, guys? You have to, we need a palate cleanse over that one. What do you think?
I mean, I
appreciate it.
I followed along quite well with it, and I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's very similar to my take that we're like if the devil made them do it or not, like without acknowledging the devil, what they did still stands. So like if I don't need to believe in the devil to know that what they did was absolutely evil.
Right.
And so
yeah,
and I think that was kind of my takeaway from that.
Right.
Yeah.
It does seem like what And I appreciate his take that there are all kinds of evil symbology that they could lob onto to justify what they were doing and spread it. That seems to be true. You don't have to know exactly what that dark energy is or whether or not it was actually possessing them to know that they used it for justification, for validation of what they were up to.
Well, and a lot of times it's other people, associating the symbology. It's like they did these things, and this thing symbolizes that, so therefore it must be this thing.
Right.
And humans, I think in general, are ritualistic. Like we have so many rituals. It doesn't have to be like a religious ritual, but I'm sure that like these sick bastards were engaging in a lot. They probably had a lot of rituals surrounding this, and it probably just felt neat to them to have a figurehead of Baal or Baphomet or whatever they want. It's like but it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if those beings actually exist, if they really have any influence. It's like the what these people are doing is evil. You don't need that other justification on top of it.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure if they had any humanity in them, they could put it all away from themselves with these paradigms. That's an easy way to not feel any kind of guilt or remorse or anything like that. Like in the Harry Potter books, remorse is the one thing that Voldemort cannot do. He cannot have it near him, right? And so this evil paradigm allows you to take that away from yourself.
Mark Cunningham in our chat room says, Baal and Molech never did nothing. People do these things and blame the devil for it. And then people say they're the devil.
Right. It's a convenient scapegoat. Absolutely.
JHCB says they are literally using your religion to protect themselves.
Right. Yeah. I think that was a brilliant point that we hadn't, I guess we're like, is it real? What's the, is it going to get us? That kind of thing. They did this and then went looking for the, justification to do this. Or, maybe it was in them to begin with. Who knows? Right. But the rest of us can see it and say, this is absolutely not in human nature. You need, So anyway.
I don't know. What if it is a part of human nature? It's a weird coincidence that people in different countries who speak different languages that have never met each other are imitating and worshiping the same deities. This is a common thing throughout human civilization. A common theme is child sacrifice, child molestation, slavery. This is a common theme throughout civilizations around the world, disconnected by time, distance, continents, religions, disconnected completely. Yet they all end up on the same paths. So, it seems like we're not giving enough credit or credence to the source. I wanted to hear what he said about the Epstein stuff too. 1 second. Let me see if I can find that part of the interview.
He already believed or was inclined to believe, and they weaponized that again.
Let's see here.
Became disappointed when they found out that they weren't doing that. So some of them then would break away, and so we really can sort that. If you're out in the woods and you see this, what actually did you see? Luck. And my question would be to that, what's luck? Right? Maybe early on some even argue they were almost the same. There's this whole vagueness in terms of terminology, but they were a rival that then the rival, not too strangely, is then turned into a kind of satanic or devilish figure because the rival can't possibly be a good guy in this case. He does get attached to child sacrifice. The Israelites at one point, or a bunch of them, actually end up worshiping Baal. So there is that kind of tradition. If you turn away from the true God, there is always the other. There is always the alternative. And it could be that particular term was used because it resonates within Jewish esoteric traditions as a transgression against God, a transgression against the normal religion. And there again is something else where the whole idea of transgression within the darker aspects of occult ritual and practice, what that means is just doing bad things for the sake of doing bad things. And that can be seen as a path to enlightenment. Now, there's always the narrow, twisting path, and then there's the straighter path. There's a quick and dirty path to enlightenment in most traditions, and there's a more sincere and genuine one. But in the quick and dirty path, what you're trying to do, it's like the story of Faust selling his soul to the devil for knowledge and wealth and sex. And there's going to be a price to be paid for that, but your soul. But in the meantime, you will gain quickly those things. You won't have to work for anything. These things will just kind of fall into your lap in terms of this Faustian bargain that they've made. Now, looking at Jeffrey Epstein's whole career, I don't know, one could maybe interpret that as signs of a Faustian bargain. He certainly became quite successful. Well, not just quite successful, became astoundingly successful without starting out that way. Remember, he's a nobody who becomes somebody, partly by associating with a lot of other somebodies. But there is an almost meteoric quality to his rise in wealth and power. And how do you explain that type of thing? Well, one is sheer talent. He was very good with numbers and hiding money. He made himself useful to powerful people, and they brought him into their circle. Another is just good luck. And my question would be to that, what's luck? Right?
Right.
Luck is always somehow suggests that there's something here that isn't quite normal. It's not just hard work. It's good luck. And, we can also press that a little further and go, it's a Faustian bargain. That at some point, Jeffrey Epstein made a deal. Who knows? Maybe with the same demon that was possessing Wexner. Now, this is just, these are the stranger possibilities. But you've got this unprecedented success. You've got the wealth and power accumulated by this Brooklyn nobody, and you got to explain it somehow.
Professor, I've done a number of interviews recently with ex-CIA whistleblowers, particularly Kevin Shipp, who's written a couple of books. And what the CIA did to his family is in many ways demonic. The CIA practices in Satanism. Even on the CIA secret base where he lived, his children witnessed like satanic ritualism, creatures walking in the woods with like giant goat heads on. And of course, then you've got Epstein's connections to the CIA and Mossad. I just can't help but think of these deep demonic satanic connections here and the luck that you're talking about with that hidden hand of the CIA in many ways running things. What do you make of those CIA demonic satanic connections here with Epstein in this?
Well, there are two ways to look at something like demonic satanic connections. And one of the ways that it's generally presented is that none of it's real. It's a dog and pony show put on to deceive and scare the masses or the ignorant in some way. And you've got dark figures walking around in the woods with goat heads on. That's someone in a costume. I mean, that's an easy way of sort of explaining that this isn't real. These are just sort of humans doing this to manipulate others through fear.
Right.
And it can be just that. I mean, this is the problem that we have with so many things. I think this is one of the things that people just often won't look at. It's difficult to separate truth from fiction, the real from the thing that pretends to be real. And I don't think in many cases we really can sort that out. If you're out in the woods and you see this, what actually did you see? What was that? If you can't run up, tackle the ground and pull the head off and see whether it comes off, you don't really know for sure. But it's confusing. It's frightening. It conjures up all kinds of possible ideas. And that, I'd argue, is the real point. that is particular why the real point as to why intelligence operatives would use this.
Yeah.
Right. But you also don't know if someone sincerely puts on these symbols in order to appeal to what they perceive as a darker power. They could very well be doing this. And they obviously did illegal and sadistic things to innocent people. And maybe they had to believe that it was part of some darker calling, because otherwise most humans are not capable of hurting other people in this way.
Well, the question of sincerity, I mean, this is the thing that we spend most of our lives trying to figure out. We deal with other people, and the question dealing with most people is that not what did they say, but what did they mean? You know, how sincere are they? You don't have to believe in Satan in order to use that image to manipulate others.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, an example of that in a way is, you know, maybe one of the most famous Satanists in American culture in the 20th century, Anton LaVey, the guy who founded the Church of Satan in 1966 in San Francisco. LaVey didn't really believe any of it. I mean, we can take him at his word. I mean, he knew this. He was, in some ways, he was a very ambitious former carnival and circus performer, and he knew that this was appealing. It was the type of thing that would draw people in. You know, it had a certain sex appeal to them, and he was fairly successful about that. But at one point, he actually told the FBI that he knew that most of the people who belonged to his church were, you know, kooks and perverts of one form or another. But, you know, they gave him the money. But he didn't believe, and he never actually professed to anyone so far now to actually believe in a physical devil. And the most he would argue is that Satanism represented enlightened self-interest. And, you know, LaVey was running a 24/7 Halloween party. That was his version of this. So he's someone who, while, you know, running something called the Church of Satan, doesn't really take it seriously. And I don't think many of the people in it. Now, the one thing that it did do is that it did actually attract people who wanted to worship the devil and then became disappointed when found out that they weren't doing that. So some of them then would break away and form other groups.
On the screen too much, but the Bible says that Baal is not really a cartoonish demon, but a Canaanite fertility and storm god whose name means Lord, but he becomes later this central symbol of Israeli spiritual rebellion, not Israeli, Israel's spiritual rebellion, a rival deity tied to ritual sex, exploitation, and even child sacrifice in surrounding pagan cultures. Now, the prophets in the Bible, especially Elijah in the book of Kings, frame Baal worship as seductive counterfeit religion based on power, pleasure, and moral corruption. Now, over time, Jewish and Christian tradition came to interpret pagan gods like Baal as demonic forces operating behind idolatry. So when the name Baal surfaces in modern controversies, it evokes not just ancient false gods, but a biblical shorthand for elite decadence, ritualized immortality, and the abandonment of moral law. Now, not only do various iterations of the word come up and also certain numbers, you can search it yourself. Again, I want you to protect yourself when you do it, but it's BAAL or BAA1 is another way that it comes up repeatedly in these documents. Also, Epstein's own financier, Lex Wessner, made references to it publicly. Here's how researcher Whitney Webb explained that.
What's so crazy, too, about him being so focused on basically taking control of the leadership of the Jewish American community by basically having it filled with people that he has trained in views that he agrees with or policies or whatever, is that Wexner in 1985 basically is like, yeah, I'm possessed by a demon that tells me what to do. And I have a split personality, and my the nice part of me is stunted, and I'm controlled by like this demon that tells me what to. He uses the Yiddish word that literally means demon. It's debuk, I think is how it's pronounced.
Debuk, which is actually COVID backwards, right?
I've heard that. I don't really, I haven't looked into that. But anyway, in the case of Wexner, that's the word he chooses. There's a lot of words he could have picked in Yiddish that sounded nicer, but he wanted to brag about basically being a demon-possessed crazy guy. And who was he catering to there? That's a New York magazine. And so that's a segment I put out from the book already. But when you look at it in the context of a guy that's, per the Jewish faith, saying that he's possessed by using the word that in the Jewish faith means like a demon possession. And he's like, yes, my demon controls me. And he's an integral.
Okay. So joining us to discuss is Professor Richard Spence. He has written extensively on this topic. He has a course that you can take called Secrets of the Occult. He writes about how the occult appears in everyday lives. So thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
yes, Professor.
Great.
Okay.
Great to see you.
For some reason, I'm up here twice.
Oh no!
Do you hear yourself twice? Okay,
Yeah,
let's see what we can do about that.
well.
That's very distracting. That's happened to me before. Boys, do you know what to do with that? We can extrapolate here, right? Because we're trying to figure out what this means and what are the power structures. I want to stick to as much proof as possible, but then also know your theories.
Well, you're asking for certainty about something about which you're not going to get much.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I think you probably already kind of realized that there's a lot of things here that are extremely suggestive. And yet, if you try to reduce that down to what you could actually prove, it wouldn't be that much. Now, keep in mind, I'm not trying to dismiss any of this. That's not the point. But I'm trying to bring it down to a baseline of saying that suspicion isn't proof. And what we've got here are a lot of, well, let's put it this way. Epstein and many of his associates, I think, could basically be described as wealthy freaks. Okay.
Yeah.
Perverts, perhaps. You can attach any kind of, these are people who have a wide array of strange tastes and desires. It's a bit like, but one example you probably brought up before, they're long discussions about jerky. Okay, let's leave ball aside for a minute, and they're just talking about jerky. It seems readily apparent that they are using that term not in terms of just talking about dried meat in the normal sense you go buy jerky in the store. They're using it as a code word for something else. Now, is that human? Are they talking about eating babies? Are they talking about eating flesh? Are they talking about drugs? Are they talking about something else? Well, that's what we don't know. They're talking about something they don't wish to discuss openly, and jerky becomes a code word for.
And that's another thing that plays into my theory. They don't want regular people understanding who or what they are. But if it's, I mean, how do you say this? They're not humans, but they're eating humans, so it's not cannibalism. And we've all heard stories that our government has interacted with these other beings that live in the earth, or other, there are other types of humans that are here. And they're typically the ones who are in power. There were royals that are now corporate executives in other countries. They own the multinationals. They used to be called royals, but a lot of countries got rid of the monarch because, remember, we're just the villagers and they're the people in the castles. Because of the internet and the way that information is spreading, eventually some of this was going to come out. All people are not the same, but they do want to confuse you. And they're using jerky for something as a code. A lot of people want to think they're exclusively eating humans. It sounds like it, but could it be interpreted as something else? Yeah, and could. But the thing is, if Epstein is dead, why is there not one snitch willing to come forward and tell us what jerky is? That means that not one whistleblower, not one celebrity, not one royal, not one anyone, all those names written in the files, not one has came forward and told us what is the jerky and explained to us what's actually going on. There's not one snitch. You know, people keep bringing up to me, these other cases that were famous like this, but I'm like, those cases all had a snitch. They had somebody that said, hey, give me immunity and I'll tell you everything. In this situation, there is none. So we don't know. We're shooting in the dark.
For that. So there are all kinds of code words that can be used. It's, if you wanted to take the significance of words alone is that in an occult sense, in the sense of sort of occult belief and practice, the idea of unveiling a hidden world and the powers within it, words are important things. The word that you choose often isn't accidental because words are the first step to being. So what do I mean by that? It's one of the things that we always do in anything is that human beings give names to things. We have to do that. We have to name it. If it's a medical condition, if it's a plant, if it's a fish, anything else, we give names to it. And that name then becomes the thing. So often we create something by giving a name to it. You know, we create characters, we create artificial people. Arthur Conan Doyle created a fictional detective, Sherlock Holmes. He gave him a name. He created this. This became a kind of person which he had created. So naming things, the use of words is in some ways, in an occult sense, is kind of the first step in creation. They shouldn't be used accidentally. There's also the whole tradition in a part, it varies one place to another, that you were talking about demons, evil spirits, whatever term you would want to use for them. One of the things that they traditionally tend to be very, very sensitive about is giving their true name. You know, there's an old story about that. Stiltskin, because you have to guess my name. Because for some reason, why? I don't know. But for some reason, to know their name is to gain power over them, to somehow the name becomes the essence of the thing itself.
Like Voldemort.
Voldemort, all right. Now, in the case of Baal or Baal, okay, it just simply means, it's a pretty generic name. It just means Lord. I would suspect, the argument would be, is that that's not actually a name. It's a title.
This is when life, I think, on Earth is going to get a little bit more interesting. I think that we are approaching the singularity, not from when a machine gains consciousness, no, but when reality and mysticism finally intersect. You know, when we read those stories of King Arthur and Merlin and those ancient tales, there's so much mysticism around life and relationships and fighting battles and death. And then it seems like somebody just turned the magic off and then it was gone. But it's like now it's like this resurgence where there are people who do believe in these lords, these gods, these demons, and they believe that these demons can perform magic and miracles. But now it's not just fake stories. Real humans, real people who are presidents and vice presidents and owners of companies that run markets and billionaires who manage the lives of thousands of people, they believe in it. They admit that they use it. It's not like Scientology where you're teaching mind over matter. there's like there's like a realm of science that people don't, that is not really studied or understood, where this kind of fills that gap. And it feels like we're going to find out how and where all these different things connect. And we're going to find out soon. It's like we're right there. These Epstein files are so important that we've literally, see, everyone thinks we started World War III to distract away from them. Who are these people and why are they so rare? And what else were they involved in?
It's a kind of job description in some way.
Oh.
And it can be used, they can give you any kind of name that they want. See, it's one of the issue, allegedly, if you want to believe in these things, is that you never know exactly who or what you're dealing with. You can get any kind of a name. It's unlikely to be the true name because arguably that would give you some degree of power over them in this case. So why would the term ball show up in Epstein's emails? Well, one possibility is that, again, it is a code word for something completely different. It's just a word which has been used. It may have what's the significant, remember, I think as Whitney Webb was talking about, however religious he was, Epstein has Jewish roots. That's the kind of cultural milieu that he comes out of. And within the traditions or history of Judaism, Baal emerged as, well, it was a god that was first a rival to the Hebrew God, to Yahweh. Maybe early on they were, some even argue they were almost the same. There's this whole vagueness in terms of terminology, but they were a rival that then the rival, not too strangely, is then turned into a kind of satanic or devilish figure because the rival can't possibly be a good guy in this case. He does get attached to child sacrifice. The Israelites at one point, or a bunch of them, actually end up worshiping Baal. So there's that kind of tradition. If you turn away from the true God, there is always the other. There is always the alternative. And it could be that particular term was used because it resonates within Jewish esoteric traditions as a transgression against God, a transgression against the normal religion. And there again is something else where the whole idea of transgression within the darker aspects of occult ritual and practice, what that means is just doing bad things for the sake of doing bad things. And that can be seen as a path to enlightenment. Now, there's always the narrow, twisting path, and then there's the straighter path. There's a quick and dirty path to enlightenment in most traditions, and there's a more sincere and genuine one. But in the quick and dirty path, what you're trying to do, it's like the story of Faust selling his soul to the devil for knowledge and wealth and sex. And there's going to be a price to be paid for that, but your soul. But in the meantime, you will gain quickly those things. You won't have to work for anything. These things will just kind of fall into your lap in terms of this Faustian bargain that they've made. Now, looking at Jeffrey Epstein's whole career, I don't know, one could maybe interpret that as signs of a Faustian bargain.
So what he's saying is that at some point in time, when Jeffrey Epstein was a low-level teacher at a high school, allegedly, since that's his backstory, I don't believe that's his backstory, but that's the one that's on paper that we've accepted. It seems as if somebody at some time approached him and made him a deal, an offer he couldn't refuse. Knowledge, wealth, sex, money, in exchange for something. Because his meteoric rise is so unnatural and inorganic that it must be studied. However, there's such little information out there. And his backstory doesn't match up with the level of knowledge and expertise this man had. He's a brilliant man. Watching the Steve Bannon interview changes everything. You look at him completely different. When you listen to the news sensationalizing him, they make you think that him and Ghislaine Maxwell are just, pimps, trafficking girls, driving up and down the Las Vegas Strip in a Cadillac. Low-level loser, punks. Way off, way wrong. Completely discounting their education levels, their positions, their accomplishments. Ghislaine Maxwell was an extremely accomplished woman as well. Brilliant. From a robust family of people that were involved with also everything to do with Israel. Her father, a Mossad agent that received an official burial, even though he wasn't officially enlisted in the Israeli military. She worked for a company that was part owner of the oceans and used to man underwater vehicles. No one ever talks about that. They just talk about all this sex stuff. No one wants to talk about the origins or the technological breakthroughs or the things that they invented. He spent 15 years at Zorro Ranch and he never tells you exactly what him and all those scientists actually came up with. But I'm pretty sure it was more than just how to do a bunch of gangbangs on little kids. That's not what those scientists were there for. They had to have generated something for their time. These are scientists that have salaries. They have families. These are people, thousands of people, hundreds of people. None of this was done in vain. Something was generated. The research at Zorro Ranch began in 93. He didn't get arrested until 98. He won the lottery twice, and everyone needed him. He was connected to Bear Stearns. He was connected to JP Morgan. He was connected everywhere. How? There was only one Epstein. What made him different than everyone else? Why did everybody else need him, but he didn't necessarily need them? And on questions, in my opinion. But I like hearing about this. That's why I'm sharing it for people who want to listen.
He certainly became quite successful. Well, not just quite successful. He became astoundingly successful without starting out that way. Remember, he's a nobody who becomes somebody, partly by associating with a lot of other somebodies. But there is an almost meteoric quality to his rise in wealth and power. And how do you explain that type of thing? Well, one is sheer talent. He was very good with numbers and hiding money. He made himself useful to powerful people, and they brought him into their circle. Another is just good luck. And my question would be to that, what's luck? Right?
Right.
Luck is always somehow suggests that there's something here that isn't quite normal. It's not just hard work. It's good luck. And, we can also press that a little further and go, it's a Faustian bargain. That at some point, Jeffrey Epstein made a deal. Who knows? Maybe with the same demon that was possessing Wexner. Now, this is just,
We are so close. We are so close to demon disclosure that it's amazing. I don't think we've ever collectively as an advanced civilization ever been this close to demonic disclosure. When they want to tell you that aliens are real, they're speaking of demons. Apparently there's a veil of reality. Like right now we all can see, taste, touch everything around us. The sensors that are connected to our brain, it controls what we feel, what we see. But when there's things that we don't know that are there, that are really there, we can't see them. Apparently you can slice the veil and go and see through it, and you can have access to other places. And they say that these demons are on the other side of the veil. You have to get to a certain level of, taking DMT. There's other things you can do, psychedelics, and they take you there. And a lot of people have the same shared experiences because, well, you're just all seeing what's actually there. It's not like you're all having individual experience. This is well recorded, but it's never been successfully publicly documented. Now you have mainstream people speaking about this on one of the largest shows, Redacted, literally talking about how the Epstein files, one thing that can explain Epstein is a Faustian bargain that he made with the demon. And that might be something that is mentioned in the Epstein files, and they're trying to keep it away from people because there eventually is going to be a demonic disclosure. We call them demons, but they're dimensionals, other dimensions that have access to our dimension. There's no space, there's no aliens, but they are from other places. And the best word we can attribute to them is a demon. And it seems like there are people that are becoming in more and more contact in our modern days with these demons. And we're like right on the precipice of demon disclosure, demonic disclosure. And we're going to find out this stuff is all real. All the stories we've been taught, everything they told us was fake and make believe. The reason these successful people believe in it is because they're real. And they were shown that these were real a long time ago, and they're given missions, and they're rewarded. Because I'm wondering, not one snitch on Epstein yet, not one whistleblower, nobody. Even the women claiming to be victims who were co-conspirators and recruiting, even they are too afraid to tell everything. They're given certain pieces, but they're not telling everything. If they would, then they would be at an FBI building going through the files, and they'll be telling us exactly which each code word meant because they were there for it all. We are very close to demonic disclosure.
These are the stranger possibilities. But you've got this unprecedented success. You've got the wealth and power accumulated by this Brooklyn nobody, and you got to explain it somehow.
Professor, I've done a number of interviews recently with ex-CIA whistleblowers, particularly Kevin Shipp, who's written a couple of books. And what the CIA did to his family is in many ways demonic. The CIA practices in Satanism, even on the CIA secret base where he lived, he witnessed, his children witnessed, like satanic ritualism, creatures walking in the woods with like giant goat heads on. And of course, then you've got Epstein's connections to the CIA and Mossad. I just can't help but think of these deep demonic satanic connections here, and the luck that you're talking about with that hidden hand of the CIA in many ways running things. What do you make of those CIA demonic satanic connections here with Epstein in this?
Well, there are two ways to look at something like demonic satanic connections. And one of the ways that it's generally presented is that none of it's real. It's a dog and pony show put on to deceive and scare the masses or the ignorant in some way. And you've got dark figures walking around in the woods with goat heads on. That's someone in a costume. I mean, that's an easy way of sort of explaining that this isn't real. These are just sort of humans doing this to manipulate others through fear.
Right.
And it can be just that. I mean, this is the problem that we have with so many things. I think this is one of the things that people just often won't look at. It's difficult to separate truth from fiction, the real from the thing that pretends to be real. And I don't think in many cases we really can sort that. You know, if you're out of the woods and you see this, what actually did you see? What was that? You know, if you can't run up, tackle the ground and pull the head off and see whether it comes off, you don't really know for sure. But it's confusing. It's frightening. It conjures up all kinds of possible ideas. And that, I'd argue, is the real point. That is particularly the real point as to why intelligence operatives would use this.
Yeah.
Right. But you also don't know if someone sincerely puts on these symbols in order to appeal to what they perceive as a darker power. They could very well be doing this. And they obviously did illegal and sadistic things to innocent people. And maybe they had to believe that it was part of some darker calling.
And he knew that this was appealing. It was the type of thing that would draw under those circumstances.
What do you mean? Why does that have to be done? These nefarious goals, and it almost doesn't matter what they believe or not. What they did was sadistic evil to innocent people.
That exactly is the point. They're doing very bad things. Now, whether they're doing bad things in the service of Satan, literally, or whether they're doing bad things using satanic imagery in the sacred cause of national security, well, the end results are the same. People are tormented and destroyed, physically or mentally. That's just one of those things that might have to be done under those circumstances.
What do you mean? Why does that have to be done?
Well, their idea to protect national security. So I could give you something I was actually just sort of working on before this meeting. It actually has to do with a fellow by the name of, you may have heard of this. You've heard of a guy named Paul Benowitz?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Paul Benowitz was an American businessman, physicist, lived in New Mexico, and was very interested in what? He was interested in UFOs. And he had a certain amount of tech savvy, and he began intercepting messages that he thought were messages between, and by the way, his view of UFOs and aliens was quite, well, satanic. They were bad. They were evil. They were plotting to take over the world. It was like a whole science fiction movie come to life in this case. They were essentially demonic beings. And what he had actually done is that he had accidentally eavesdropped on a very secret NSA satellite communications system out of Kirtland Air Force Base. Thought these evil demonic aliens were up to. They then set out, there's a whole longer story here, to essentially go in and not tell him he was wrong, but tell him, oh, you're absolutely right. That he threatened to intrude. Arguably, from an actor's standpoint, you have to immerse yourself in the character. You have to make it as real as possible. And therefore, there is always, in the process of imitation, in the process of acting or pretending.
Yeah, we had talked about this part earlier. There's too much to these files to let it go. But I'm noticing that since Trump's been exonerated because of the files, people are losing interest when there's way more in there that needs to be studied and read. And I'm not going to be able to read all millions of pages by myself. We got 2% of the disclosure. There's 98% missing. So we need to stay on track and then start looking into the technological parts of it, kind of filter out all the other distracting, salacious BS. Like and subscribe, share the video. I'll be back on with another topic in about 20 minutes.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.